right, so this lesson is for students who are currently in quarantine or students who are absent on the day, on the day that I'm going to be teaching this lesson about 3-word theme statements. And so again, if you're a student who has been in quarantine or you were not at school on Wednesday of this week, if you're blue group, or on Thursday of this week, if you're green group, then you are going to be using this lesson to get yourself caught up on what you have missed here at school. So at this point, before we start this lesson, I need to remind you that you should be on page 80 or more of your book in order for you to be successful at this lesson. And so if you've not gotten to page 80 yet, please invest the time into reading so that we can get ourselves caught up and ready to start thinking about theme. So for this lesson, guys, you're going to need your language arts notebook. If you don't have your language arts notebook, then just use a piece of notebook paper that you may have at home or some type of paper to go ahead and jot a couple of things down. Because what we're going to be learning today is a 3-step process, and I am going to ask you to write down the 3 steps, and I'm going to walk you through exactly what you should be writing in your notes. So let's go ahead and get started. In your language arts notebook or on your piece of paper, I would like you to please title it, I'm going to show you right here, 3-word theme statements, just like I have done in my notes. And again, we're going to be talking about 3 different steps. And for this particular one, we're going to start with step 1. So step 1 of this entire process is, in order to figure out theme, good readers are able to identify topics or ideas that are in their book that are repetitive or important. So, guys, topics are just subjects. What are some subjects that the author has hidden or made very explicit in your book that we're noticing are big ideas or subjects within your book? Those may be things like family, friendship, love, revenge, connection, trust, these big ideas or subjects or topics that we're kind of recognizing have significance in our book. We want to start to take note of those. And so our step 1 here is to start thinking about and identifying topics or ideas that are repetitive or important in your book. And so in your notes, right underneath where you wrote 3-word theme statements, I want you to write what is here in yellow. Step 1, identify topics or ideas that are repetitive or important in your book. This would be the time to go ahead and stop the video so that you are able to write that down. Your notes should look like this. Identifying topics, step 1. Identify topics or ideas that are repetitive or important in your book. This is the first step for us to start thinking about theme. We start small with 1-word topics or ideas. Let me show you what this looks like. So again, topics are just subjects or ideas in your book. And in the book I'm reading a couple of books right now, but one of the books I'm reading is A Monster Calls. And I'm noticing that within that book, A Monster Calls, these are about 10 different topics that I'm noticing are arising within my book. Isolation, because my character is very much alone and he doesn't really have anyone, so I felt that's isolation. Bullying, love is in my book. Death is in my book. Loss, vulnerability, revenge, anger, trust, and hope. Now, are there more topics than that? There might be, but these are just a couple of the topics that I'm noticing the author is bringing up not only once, but a couple of times it's being repetitive within the book. Now, the author's never going to say bullying is in the book, but when you're noticing that something is happening quite often, we think about what topic kind of overarches all of those things. And so in order to get all of these topics, I simply looked at my characters' experiences, their emotions, and the problems they faced. And I asked myself, what's happening in my book and what subjects support those happenings? And that's how I came to my list of 10 topics. And so what you should have in your notes so far is this. You should have labeled it 3-word theme statements. You should have put step 1, which is to identify topics. You should have written the definition of step 1, which is, identify topics or ideas that are repetitive. And then let's go ahead and include some examples of topics. And so what I did is I just wrote a small list down at the bottom in my notes of a couple of different topics that I had on the previous slide. Stuff like death and bullying, loss, survival, anger, etc. And so just taking a couple of quick notes about some examples of topics, because you are going to be asked to do all 3 of these steps. And so these are just a couple of examples you can pull from. Now let's move on to step 2. So step 2 is us taking, obviously, step 1 step further. So ultimately what we're doing in step 2 is we're taking our 1-word topic and now we're turning that into a 3-word theme statement. And in order to do this, you take that single word and you ask yourself, well, what is the author trying to teach me about that topic? So, for example, if in step 1 you said a topic in your book is love, then you need to ask yourself, what is the author trying to teach me about love? Then in step 2, you answer that question, what is the author trying to teach me about love? And you answer it in 3 words. So the author may be trying to teach you that love accompanies fear. Love is painful. Okay, so just some type of 3-word lesson or learning that could take place using the 1 word that you identified in step 1. So let me show you what this looks like. Okay, first things first, here is step 1. In step 1, you come up with a list of subjects or topics that you're recognizing within your book. Well, here are 4 different examples. I recognize love, vulnerability, loss, and honesty. In step 2, I'm asking myself, what's the author trying to teach me about love? What's the author trying to teach me about vulnerability? What's the author trying to teach me about loss? What's the author trying to teach me about honesty? And however I answer those questions, I come up with 3 words that I feel do the best job at answering what the author is trying to teach me about that topic. So, in step 1, I said love. And in step 2, it's now grown into a 3-word statement. Love accompanies fear. Same thing with vulnerability. In vulnerability, in step 1, I've now changed it to a 3-word statement. Vulnerability requires connection. Now I go to loss. I started with loss. I ask myself, what is the author trying to teach me about loss? And I answer, loss is unavoidable. And lastly, my topic is honesty. I ask myself, what is the author trying to teach me about honesty? And my answer is, honesty isn't simple. We want to keep these 3-word statements short and sweet so that we can get to the specifics about what the author is teaching us. We don't want this to be very rambly and a word jumble. We want this to be targeted and specific. That's why we're taking on the challenge of only using 3 words. So at this point in your notes, they should look like this. You should have written down step 1 with examples and step 2 now with examples. So you're welcome to go ahead and stop and make sure you've written down these notes here. We've written what was in yellow. Take your topic and turn it into a 3-word theme statement by asking yourself, what is the author trying to teach me? And then for my examples, I just kind of wrote down 1 to 2 different examples of here's my topic, love and loss, and now here is my 3-word theme statement. All right, last step. So as you notice, each step we're kind of adding more detail and more words to get to the bottom of the theme. So in step 3, what you're doing here is you're taking that 3-word theme that you developed in step 2, and now you're rewording it and adding to it in order to be more elaborate and more specific to the actual lesson that's being taught. And so now what we're doing is we're taking what we've done in step 2 and we're growing it, and we're making it a stronger, more developed theme. And so in your notes, you are going to write down what is written here for step 3 that's in yellow. Take your 3-word theme statement and reword it to be more elaborate and specific to the actual lesson that's being taught. So here is an example of all 3 steps together, guys. So here's step 1, identify a topic. My topic is hope, okay? In order to get to step 2, I ask myself, well, what does the author want me to learn about hope? And then I answer that question using 3 words only. Hope brings peace. Now what I do is I look at this 3-word statement and I simply try to elaborate on it by getting just a little bit more specific about what the author is intending for us to learn. And I'm trying to use language that's super clear. I have to remember, though, that themes do not tell readers what to do, so I have to be careful with my wording. So, in order to go from step 2 to step 3, I simply want to look at hope brings peace and start thinking about, well, what's happening in my story about hope and this idea of bringing peace? Like, what is happening? So, after lots of thought and consideration, I came up with this even longer theme for my step 3. Having hope during trying times can often bring a sense of peace to our pain. Notice I use all 3 of these words: hope, brings, peace. All I've done is I've added additional words to the 3 words that were already existing in order to get a little bit more specific. We need to have hope. When do we need to have hope? During trying times. What can it do? Bring peace. Bring peace when? When we're feeling pain. And so I sort of just asked myself questions to get me to elaborate just a little bit further on the 3 words I identified in step 2. So at this point in your notes, you should have written down step 1 and examples, step 2 and examples, and now step 3 and an example using the one that I just discussed about hope. And so guys, this 3-step process is what we're going to be using in class in order to help ourselves start to think about and identify those big themes that are happening within our story. Now, this 3-step strategy is hard. Each step you get to brings a whole different set of challenges, and it all comes down to wording. And so what I need you to consider is that this isn't going to be easy. It's going to require effort and motivation and hard work and lots of thought. And so we need to sit and really think about these things, because that's what school's for. It's supposed to challenge us and get our brain thinking in a different way. And that's definitely what these 3 steps are going to start to do. So guys, using this 3-step process, you are going to try to complete the assignment in Google Classroom called 3-word theme statements. And that is going to be a chart that has you identifying 4 topics from your book, turning each of those 4 topics into a 3-word theme statement, and then turning those 3-word theme statements into a more sophisticated theme idea or theme sentence. Okay, so this is all going to be our work for this week, in addition to investing our time reading. Of course, if you have questions, you may ask them, but ultimately we are using these notes and referencing them in order to try practicing these 3 steps using our own book. All right, guys, I hope you have a good rest of the week, and I will see you soon.